The Aurum Spire did not just travel through space, it presided over it. A diplomatic arc of gold and glass. It drifted through the ribbon of a jeweled nebula like a needle pulling a thread of light through the dark fabric of the void. Outside the 3-meter-thick viewing ports, the cosmos was a bruising of violet gas and burning stellar dust. Inside, the air smelled of recycled oxygen and expensive, aggressive perfume. Lyra Voss moved through the corridors with the practiced invisibility of someone who knew exactly how to be ignored. She was an Asteri, tall and lithe, her skin the color of polished moonlight. But she wore the soft gray uniform of the domestic service staff. The fabric was designed to dampen sound and blur lines, making her just another piece of moving furniture in the grand, paranoid theater of the peace talks. She carried a tray of spiced water, her head bowed at the precise angle of subservience required by the station protocols. But her eyes, hidden beneath the sweep of her silver lashes, missed nothing. She noted the tremor in the hands of the human ambassador as he checked his datapad. She cataloged the new security rotations. 6 guards where yesterday there had been 4. She saw the way the shadows stretched long and thin, like fingers grasping for something they could not quite touch. Lyra belonged everywhere and nowhere. She was a ghost in a machine built of politics and lies. Her destination was the East Wing, a sector restricted to high-clearance personnel and, paradoxically, the cleaning staff. She pressed her palm to the biolock of a heavy door, the mechanism hissing open to reveal a chamber that felt less like a room and more like a twilight sanctum. The lights here were always dim, amber and low, designed to soothe sensitive eyes. The air was thick with the scent of lavender, pumped in to mask the sterile tang of medical equipment. In the center of the room, seated in a high-backed chair that swallowed her small frame, sat Princess Sarai. Sarai was a child of arguably 10 standard years, though Asteri ages were difficult for humans to gauge. She sat with the stillness of a statue, her hands folded in her lap. Covering the upper half of her face was a band of black silk, a heavy veil that hid the eyes everyone on the spire knew were useless. She had been blind since birth, a tragic defect in a lineage obsessed with physical perfection. Lyra set the tray down on a low table, the clink of glass against metal the only sound in the room. She took the seat opposite the child, picking up a leather-bound book from the stack beside the chair. "Good morning, Highness," Lyra said, her voice a soft melodic hum. "The air is heavy today," Sarai said. Her voice was thin, like a reed vibrating in the wind. She did not move her head. "Like the nebulas pressing on the glass. The shields are holding, little one," Lyra said. She opened the book. It was an ancient physical copy, rare and exorbitantly expensive, filled with printed words rather than holographic projections. "Shall we continue where we left off?" The maid read stories to the blind alien child daily, never knowing she could see the future. Lyra began to read. The story was a complex Asteri fable about the tides of a moon that did not exist, full of shifting gravity and philosophical wails. As Lyra read, she watched the child. It was a habit she could not break. There were moments, fleeting and strange, where Sarai seemed to react to the words before they left Lyra's lips. Lyra was reading a passage about a great wave crashing against the shore. "And the water rose up like 1,000 hands." Lyra read, but a second before she said the word hands. Sarai's fingers had curled into fists, tightening on the silk of her dress. "And crushed the stone tower," Lyra continued. Sarai let out a breath, her shoulders sagging. A heartbeat before the destruction was described. It was subtle. Anyone else would have called it coincidence. But Lyra Voss had survived this long by trusting her instincts, and her instincts told her the child was listening to a rhythm that ran slightly ahead of the rest of the world. That story is too sad for today, Sarai said suddenly, cutting Lyra off. Read the human one, the one about the bears. Lyra blinked, shifting gears. She reached for a thinner, colorful book that had been a gift from a human delegate. It was a collection of Earth fairy tales, simplistic and bizarre to the Asteri mind. Very well, Lyra said. She found the page, the tale of Goldilocks and the three bears. Sarai tilted her head, the black veil shifting slightly. Lyra cleared her throat. She found human names clunky, their vowels harsh against her tongue. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Goldilocks. Goldilocks, Sarai corrected gently. Lyra paused. That is what I said. Goldilocks. No, Sarai said, a tiny, almost invisible smile touching her pale lips. The human stress is on the first syllable. Goldilocks, like the metal. Lyra stared at the child. The girl had never met a human, had never left this room without a phalanx of guards, and certainly had no access to linguistic databases. You have a good ear, Highness, Lyra said, narrowing her eyes slightly. I listen, Sarai said simply. The walls talk, Lyra, even when they are quiet. Lyra felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. She resumed reading, but her focus was split. She was not just a reader, she was a watcher. And the thing she was watching was an enigma wrapped in silk. 2 levels down, in the chaotic bustle of the diplomatic atrium, Jonah Reed leaned against a pillar of faux marble and wished for a cigarette. Tobacco had been contraband on station decks for 50 years. But the craving was a ghost that haunted his fingers. Jonah was a man who looked like he had been carved out of something durable and cheap, like granite or old iron. He wore the dark blue tactical armor of the Spire's security detail, the emblem of the United Earth Coalition scuffed on his shoulder. He was 40 years old and looked 50, with eyes that were perpetually tired and sharp as broken glass. He was watching the crowd. It was his job to watch, to categorize threats before they became actions. He scanned the room, filtering out the noise. There were the Asteri delegates, tall and shimmering in their robes of woven light, looking down at the humans with benevolent condescension. There were the human ministers, sweating in their suits, desperate to secure trade routes and technology transfers. Sector 4 is clear, a voice buzzed in his earpiece. Copy, Jonah muttered. He keep eyes on the delegation from the outer rim. They looked twitchy. His gaze drifted to the upper balcony, where the domestic staff were setting up for the afternoon tea service. He saw a drone, a floating silver disc laden with steaming carafes of amber liquid, hovering near the private box where the Princess Sarai was usually paraded out for ceremonial waves. Today, the child was there, seated behind a translucent barrier, the maid Lyra standing rigid beside her. Jonah's eyes narrowed. He had noticed the maid before. It was hard not to. Even in the drab uniform, she moved with a grace that made the other servants look like they were wading through mud. She stood too still. Civilians fidgeted. Servants slumped. Soldiers and predators stood still. The service drone gave a mechanical shudder. Its gyroscopes whined, a pitch Jonah heard even over the din of the crowd. Drone malfunction balcony, Jonah said into his comms, pushing off the pillar. It happened in the space between seconds. The drone lurched, one of its stabilizers failing. The tray tipped, sending a gallon of scalding, chemically heated tea cascading toward the seated child. The guards were too slow. The diplomats were too far away. But Lyra moved. She did not gasp or flinch. She flowed. She pivoted on her heel, placing her body between the child and the falling liquid. She didn't just block it. She caught the spill with a sweep of a heavy decorative cloak she snatched from a nearby chair, whipping the fabric up to catch the boiling stream and deflecting it away from the child's skin. The liquid splashed across Lyra's back and the floor, hissing as it hit the polished tile. Lyra stood panting slightly, the soaked cloak steaming in her hand. She dropped it, checking the child immediately, her hands moving over Sarai's arms to ensure not a drop had touched her. Jonah stopped 10 feet away, his hand hovering near the stun baton at his belt. He watched the maid. She was checking the child for injuries, but her eyes were scanning the balcony, looking for the source of the malfunction. That was not a servant's reaction. A servant panicked. A bodyguard assessed the threat vector. "Are you hurt?" Jonah asked, his voice gravel rough. Lyra looked up. Her eyes were a striking shade of violet, wide and seemingly innocent. "I am fine, officer. Just a spill. Clumsy machinery." "You moved fast," Jonah said. "Awfully fast for a maid." "I did not want Her Highness to be burned," Lyra said, lowering her head. "Fear makes the feet quick." Jonah didn't buy it. He had seen fear. Fear made people freeze or scramble. It did not make them execute a perfect defensive pivot. But before he could press her, the Asteri guards swarmed in, pushing him back, surrounding the child and the maid in a wall of white armor. "Clear the area, human," one of the guards snapped. Jonah stepped back, raising his hands. But he didn't stop watching Lyra Voss. She was soothing the child, her face a mask of concern, but he saw the tension in her jaw. She knew he had seen her. The incident with the drone was scrubbed from the official record within the hour, classified as a minor mechanical anomaly. But the tension on the Aurum spire tightened like a winch. Later that afternoon, the Grand Council chamber was sealed. The air recyclers hummed loudly, struggling to circulate the stagnant atmosphere of angry politicians. "The Concord override is non-negotiable," the shout came from Minister Vane, a human representative with a face flushed red. "We cannot guarantee the security of this station if every security protocol has to be debated by a committee of 12. Opposite him, High Minister Kale of the Asteri Dominion sat with infuriating calm. "The override grants your security forces the right to detain Asteri citizens without charge for 48 hours. You ask for the power of a tyrant in the name of stability." "We ask for the power to stop accidents," Vane shot back, slamming his hand on the table. "Like the one today. What if that drone had been a bomb? What if the maid had been an assassin?" Lyra, standing in the shadows at the back of the room with a pitcher of water, kept her face blank. They were talking about her as if she were a prop. "We need emergency powers," Vane insisted. "For the sake of stability, if the treaty is to be signed in 3 days, we need to know the board is clear." "The Dominion will consider the request," Kale said, his voice like dry leaves. "But know this, human. When you build a cage for safety, make sure you are holding the key." Lyra slipped out of the room before she could be dismissed. Her heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm against her ribs. Concord override. It was a legal coup. If passed, it would turn the station into a police state overnight. She made her way back to Sarai's quarters. The encounter with the drone had rattled the guards, and they had doubled the perimeter. Lyra had to pass 3 checkpoints to get back to the lavender-scented room. When she entered, Sarai was asleep, or pretending to be. The child lay on a divan, the black veil removed, her eyes closed. Lyra moved quietly, tidying the room. She picked up the book they had been reading. As she placed it on the shelf, something caught her eye. A faint glimmer of light near the ceiling molding. Lyra froze. She glanced at the sleeping child, then pulled a small cosmetic mirror from her pocket. She angled it, inspecting the molding. It was a sensor, not a smoke detector, and not a standard security camera. It was a biometric scanner, the kind used in high-security prisons to monitor heart rate and adrenal levels. She moved around the room, using the mirror. There was another one behind the drapery and another embedded in the frame of the bed. The room was not a nursery. It was a containment cell. They were not just watching Sarai to protect her. They were measuring her biology. They were waiting for something. Lyra pocketed the mirror, her blood running cold. The warning from the house steward earlier that week echoed in her mind. Don't get attached. She wasn't just a maid. She was a zookeeper. The ship ran on a 24-hour cycle, but night was a theoretical concept in deep space. The station dimmed the lights in the corridors to simulate evening, turning the gold hallways into tunnels of shadow. Lyra needed to clear her head. She had slipped out of the servants' quarters, wearing a dark shawl over her uniform. She was technically off-duty, but being in the diplomatic sector after 2,200 hours was a violation of protocol. She turned a corner near the observation deck, walking fast, her mind racing with the layout of the sensors in Sarai's room. You are a long way from the laundry, Voss. Lyra stopped. Jonah Reed stepped out of an alcove, the amber emergency light catching the hard line of his jaw. He was still in armor, his helmet under his arm. Officer Reed, Lyra said, her voice smooth. I was unable to sleep. The air recyclers are loud tonight. They are always loud, Jonah said. He walked toward her, his boots heavy on the deck. You know this is a restricted zone. I am lost, Lyra lied. She did it beautifully, adding just the right amount of embarrassment to her posture. You don't get lost, Jonah said. He stopped 2 feet from her. He smelled of gun oil and old coffee. I watched you on the balcony. You moved like you have had combat training. Who are you really? I am a maid, Lyra said, meeting his eyes. I read stories. I pour tea, and I try to keep a blind child from being scalded by incompetent machinery. Machinery doesn't just fail, Jonah said low. That drone was hacked. Someone wanted to hurt the girl. Or maybe they just wanted to see what would happen. Lyra felt a flicker of surprise. He was smarter than he looked. Why tell me this? Because you are the only one who did anything about it, Jonah said. The guards froze. You didn't. That makes you dangerous, but it also makes you useful. I am not useful to you, officer, Lyra said, stepping around him. I am just cleaning up the mess. Careful, Voss, Jonah said, not turning to face her as she passed. The floors are slippery. It was a threat, and it was a warning. Lyra didn't look back. She could feel the heat of him, the sheer physical presence of the man. He was a brute instrument, but he was seeing parts of the puzzle she had hoped were hidden. Sparks flew when flint hit steel, and they had just struck each other. The next morning, the atmosphere in Sarai's room was brittle. The child was sitting up, the veil back in place. She seemed agitated, her small fingers plucking at the threads of her dress. Lyra sat down, opening the book. Shall we read about the phoenix today, Highness? The bird that burns, Sarai whispered. The bird that rises, Lyra corrected gently. She began to read. It was a story of a bird made of fire that lived in a cage of ice. The bird sang to melt the bars, but the ice was magic and would not break. Lyra read the line. The phoenix sang until its throat was raw, but the cage remained. Sarai leaned forward. The cage opens when the lyre cries. Lyra stopped. That was not in the book. What did you say? The cage opens when the lyre cries, Sarai repeated, her voice monotone, devoid of childish inflection. Lyra laughed softly, a nervous sound. That is a strange riddle. Sarai, there are no liars in this story, only the bird and the ice. Everyone is a liar, Sarai said. She turned her veiled face toward the door. Even the man with the silver pin, Lyra frowned. Who? Before Sarai could answer, the door chimed and slid open. It was not a guard. It was the house steward, a tall, gaunt asteri named Kalen. He looked pale, his usually immaculate robes disheveled. Leave us, Kalen said to the guards. He stepped into the room, looking at Lyra. There has been an incident. What has happened? Lyra asked, standing up. Senior aide Marlowe was found dead in his quarters this morning, Kalen said stiffly. Heart failure, or so the official report will state. Lyra went still. Marlowe was the man who wore the silver pin of the logistics office. The man Sarai had just mentioned. A tragedy, Lyra said, keeping her voice steady. Kalen walked over to the window, looking out at the stars. He was a fool. He asked too many questions about the medical budget. He turned to look at Lyra, his eyes cold and dead. You are fond of the child. Lyra. She is my charge, Lyra said. She is not a child, Kalen said, his voice dropping to a whisper. She is an asset. Do not forget that. Assets are spent. Do not get attached to currency. He swept out of the room, leaving the air cold behind him. Lyra stood frozen. The cage opens when the liar cries. Marlowe was dead. Sarai had known. She turned slowly to look at the girl. Sarai was sitting perfectly still, her hands resting on the open book. Sarai, Lyra whispered, how did you know? Sarai didn't answer the question. She simply tapped the page Lyra had not yet turned. It was the right-hand page, the text still hidden by Lyra's thumb. Read it, Sarai said softly. Lyra looked at the text. It was the next line of the story. The fire cannot die, Sarai recited, her voice echoing the words exactly as Lyra's eyes scanned them. For the fire remembers what the ice forgets. She said the words in perfect unison with Lyra's internal reading, breathless and exact. Lyra pulled her hand back as if the book were burning. The child wasn't memorizing the stories. She wasn't guessing. You aren't blind, Lyra breathed. Sarai tilted her head, the veil black as the void outside. I am blind to now, Lyra. I cannot see your face. I cannot see the room. She turned her head toward the window, toward the bruising purple of the nebula. But I can see what comes next. Lyra stared at her, the reality of it crashing down. The sensors, the containment, the Concord override. They weren't protecting a princess. They were guarding an oracle. Sarai reached out a small, pale hand and touched Lyra's trembling wrist. Don't be afraid, the child whispered. The scary part hasn't started yet. The following day, Lyra Voss decided to test the boundaries of the impossible. She did not choose a storybook from the nursery shelf. Instead, she went to the Spire's digital archives and printed a physical transcript of a flight manual for a decommissioned heavy hauler starship. It was dry, technical, and utterly devoid of narrative arc. There were no heroes, no villains, and certainly no emotional crescendos. She sat in the lavender-scented room, the sheaf of papers resting on her knee. Sarai sat opposite her, the black veil still and impenetrable. Today is different, Lyra said. We are reading about the thrust-to-weight ratios of the Titan-class freighter. If you wish, Sarai said. Her voice was flat, but her hands were gripping the arms of her chair. Lyra began to read. The primary ignition sequence requires a fuel mixture of 40% helium-3 and 60% hydrogen. She watched Sarai. The child was trembling. In the event of a coolant leak, Lyra read, keeping her voice level. The emergency venting protocols will engage automatically. Sarai let out a sharp, ragged breath, like someone who had just been punched in the gut. Tears slid out from under the black silk, tracking down her pale cheeks. Lyra stopped. Sarai, it is just a manual. It is boring technical data. He is so scared, Sarai whispered, her voice cracking. He is alone in the dark, and the air is running out. Lyra looked down at the text. 2 paragraphs later, there was a warning note about the risk of asphyxiation in the cargo hold during a power failure. The manual was just words, but Sarai was feeling the terror of some future event associated with those words. She wasn't hearing the text. She was feeling the echo of a tragedy that the text merely described the mechanics of. Lyra closed the folder. The child did not see the present. She saw the emotional shape of the future. And right now, the future was bleeding. Jonah Reed stood in the sterile white light of the security morgue, looking down at the body of Senior Aide Marlowe. The autopsy report scrolled across the holographic display above the slab. Cardiac arrest, Jonah read aloud. Induced by natural causes. He looked at the corpse. Marlowe was young, fit, and had the kind of expensive genetic tweaking that usually guaranteed a lifespan of 150 years. His face was frozen in a rictus of surprise, not pain. Natural causes, Jonah muttered. Sure. Drop it. Read. Jonah didn't turn. He knew the voice. Commander Thorne, the head of Spire Security, stood in the doorway. Thorne was a man who polished his boots more often than he questioned his orders. The toxicology screen is clean, Thorne said, stepping into the room. The medical droid signed off on it. The medical droids run on software that can be patched, Jonah said, finally turning to face his superior. Marlowe was looking into the logistics of the East Wing, specifically, the delivery schedules for medical supplies to the Royal Suite. 12 hours later, his heart stops. We are in the middle of the most delicate peace talks in a century. Thorne snapped. The Asteri Dominion is looking for any excuse to walk away or, worse, to invoke the Concord override. We do not need a murder investigation scandal. So we just bury him and pretend the smell isn't there, Jonah asked, his voice low and dangerous. We prioritize the treaty, Thorne said. For the greater good. You are off this case. Reed, go supervise the banquet setup in the Grand Hall. Make sure no one assassinates a waiter. Jonah held Thorne's gaze for a long moment. He wanted to push, to throw the badge on the table, but he thought of the maid, Lyra, and the way she had moved to shield the child. If there was a cover-up, the danger wasn't just to the treaty. It was centered on that room. Fine, Jonah said, walking past Thorne. I'll go watch the silverware. The Grand Hall was a cavern of gold and crystal, large enough to house a small corvette. Technicians and servants swarmed over the floor, setting up for the evening's gala. Lyra was there, supervising the placement of floral arrangements. The flowers were genetically modified orchids from the Asteri homeworld, massive blooms that pulsed with bioluminescence. She was adjusting a particularly stubborn stem when she sensed him. Jonah Reed was standing 10 feet away, arms crossed, looking bored and lethal in his dress uniform. Lyra finished her task and moved toward the service station, but the crush of bodies forced them together near a decorative pillar. Officer Reed, Lyra said, I see you have been demoted to Flower Watch. Promoted to Beverage Security, Jonah corrected. He looked at her. She was wearing a different uniform today, a severe high-collared tunic that should have looked dowdy but only managed to emphasize the long, elegant line of her neck. You seem to be everywhere, Voss, A good maid is essential infrastructure, she said. A group of dignitaries swept past them. One of them, a senator from the Proxima system, was a loud, boisterous man wearing an elaborate, shimmering hairpiece that looked like spun sugar. Lyra watched him pass, her expression politely blank. "It is fascinating," she murmured, "how the humans allow parasitic organisms to bond with their craniums for social status." Jonah choked on a laugh, turning it into a cough. "That is a wig, Lyra. It's synthetic hair. Fashion." Lyra looked at him, genuinely confused. "It is not alive, but it vibrates." "That would be the wind from the vents," Jonah said, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Or maybe he just bought a cheap one." Lyra tilted her head, a glimmer of amusement finally breaking through her professional mask. "I see. I have much to learn about your culture. It is very brave." For a moment, the noise of the hall faded. They were standing inches apart. Jonah could smell the soap she used, something clean and sharp, like rain on stone. He noticed the way her breathing was perfectly controlled, a slow, rhythmic intake that never wavered. It was the breathing of a sniper or a meditation master. Lyra, in turn, looked at Jonah's hands. They were resting on his belt, near his sidearm. They were large hands, scarred and rough, but they were steady. She imagined those hands holding a weapon, and then, unbidden, she imagined them holding something else. The thought was a spark of heat in the cool discipline of her mind. "You should get back to your flowers," Jonah said, his voice dropping an octave, "before someone accuses you of fraternizing with the help." "I am the help," Lyra said softly. "No," Jonah said, his eyes locking onto hers. "You are definitely not." That evening, the reading session was different. Sarai was not just listening. She was rewriting. Lyra was reading a simple fable about a wolf in a forest. The wolf walked down the path. Lyra read, "The wolf wore a red coat." Sarai interrupted, her voice was dreamy, distant. "And he opened the door with the numbers 4, 1, and 7. Lyra paused. 4, 1, 7. "The door was heavy," Sarai continued, "and behind it, the men were trading coins for blood." Lyra marked the page and closed the book. "Rest now, Highness." She left the room, her heart hammering. She went straight to the service lift, descending to the administrative levels. She knew the layout of the spire. Sector 4 was logistics. Room 17, room 417. She moved through the corridors, blending into the shadows. When she reached the door marked 417, she didn't try to open it. She pressed her ear to the ventilation grate near the floor. Voices drifted out, low, urgent. "The vote is secured," a voice said. It sounded like High Minister Kale. "The Concord override will pass tomorrow." "And the child?" A human voice. Minister Vane. "The oracle condition is stable," Kale replied. "Once we have the emergency powers, we will use her visions to identify the dissenters before they even act. We will purge the opposition based on crimes they haven't committed yet." Lyra's breath hitched. They weren't just using Sarai to see the future. They were building a pre-crime dictatorship. Sarai was the engine of a tyranny that would end free will. "What about the maid?" Vane asked. "She is a loose end," Kyle said. "Arrange a transfer, or an accident. After the vote, we seal the asset." Lyra pushed herself away from the grate. She had to run. She had to get Sarai out. She turned and walked straight into the chest of a guard. "Hold it," the guard growled, grabbing her arm. He wasn't Spire security. He was private militia, wearing the crest of the Dominion. "This is a restricted area. Identify yourself." Lyra calculated the strike. Throat, knee, solar plexus. She could drop him in 2 seconds. But there were cameras. She is with me. Jonah Reed stepped out of the shadows of the cross corridor. He looked furious, but his hand was resting casually on his stun baton. The guard frowned. This is Dominion business, officer. And she is a suspect in a theft investigation I am conducting. Jonah lied smoothly. I've been tracking her all night. Hand her over or I file a jurisdictional complaint that will tie your captain up in paperwork for a month. The guard hesitated, then shoved Lyra toward Jonah. Keep your servants on a leash. Human. Jonah grabbed Lyra's arm, firmly but not painfully, and marched her around the corner, shoving her into a service lift. He punched the button for the upper decks. As the doors hissed shut, the silence in the small metal box was explosive. Are you trying to get killed? Jonah demanded, turning on her. What were you doing at that door? I was doing your job, Lyra snapped, the adrenaline finally breaking her composure. Since you seem unable to look past your own regulations, my regulations are keeping you alive, Jonah shouted. He stepped closer, crowding her against the wall. Do you have any idea what is happening on this station? People are dying. Voss. I know, Lyra shouted back. She looked up at him, her violet eyes blazing. They are going to use her, Jonah. They are going to use Sarai to end everything. Who are you? Jonah asked, his voice rough. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating off him. You aren't a maid. You aren't a civilian. Tell me the truth. I am someone who is running out of time, Lyra whispered. The anger in the air shifted, twisting into something else. The fear and the proximity and the secrets collided. Jonah looked at her mouth. Lyra looked at the pulse in his neck. The desire was sudden and violent, a desperate need for connection in a world that was falling apart. Jonah's hand came up, cupping her jaw, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. It wasn't gentle, it was urgent. Lyra didn't pull away. She leaned into the touch, her breath hitching. Jonah, she breathed. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. Tell me to stop. No, she said. The lift shuddered. The emergency lights strobed red. A klaxon began to wail, harsh and rhythmic. Security alert. Medical emergency in East Wing. Sector 7 locked down. Jonah pulled back, his eyes clearing. Sector 7. That's the royal suite. Lyra went pale. The accident. Kale said they would seal the asset. They aren't waiting for the vote, Jonah said, drawing his weapon. They are moving her now. Lyra didn't run. She sprinted. She abandoned the stealth protocols, moving with the terrifying speed of her heritage. Jonah struggled to keep up, his heavy boots pounding the deck. They reached the corridor outside Sarai's room. It was blocked by a team of 4 medics wearing sterile white suits and full-face respirators. They were pushing a grav stretcher. On the stretcher, strapped down, was a small shape covered in a sheet. Halt, one of the medics shouted, raising a device that looked like a scanner but held like a pistol. Lyra didn't slow down. She slid across the floor, sweeping the legs of the lead medic. As he fell, she grabbed the device from his hand, a neural stunner, and fired it into his chest. The other 3 drew kinetic pistols. Drop it, Jonah yelled, skidding into position behind a cargo crate. He fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Spire security, stand down. Execute extraction, the leader hissed. The medics opened fire. Bullets sparked against the metal walls. Jonah returned fire, his aim precise. He clipped one medic in the shoulder, spinning him around. Lyra ignored the gunfire. She vaulted over the stretcher, ripping the straps loose. She pulled the sheet back. It wasn't Sarai. It was a decoy drone, a mannequin shaped like a child. She is not here, Lyra screamed. Inside! Jonah shouted, laying down suppressing fire. Lyra kicked the door to the suite open. The room was empty, but the window, the thick blast-proof observation port, had been cut open. A docking tube from a stealth craft was latched onto the hull. They were taking her directly off the spire. Lyra dived through the cut window into the docking tube. She saw Sarai at the end of the tunnel, being dragged by two commandos into the airlock of a black, unmarked ship. "Sarai!" Lyra screamed. The child twisted in the grip of her captors. She didn't look back. She looked forward, into the ship. Lyra reached the airlock just as the inner door slammed shut. She pounded on the metal, helpless. Behind her, Jonah scrambled into the tube. "They're decoupling, we have to go." The tube groaned, metal shrieking as the stealth ship disengaged. Atmosphere began to hiss out. "We can't lose her," Lyra gasped. "We won't," Jonah said. He grabbed Lyra's waist. "But we can't catch a ship on foot. We need to get to the hangar. Now." They scrambled back into the room just as the tube detached, the emergency shutters slamming down to seal the breach. "Maintenance tunnels," Lyra said, her mind racing. "If we take the reactor route, we can cut them off before they clear the blast shield." "That's a radioactive zone," Jonah said. "Do you want to live forever, officer?" Lyra asked, already moving to a hidden panel in the wall. Jonah looked at her, then at the sealed window. He holstered his gun. "Lead the way." The reactor halls were a nightmare of throbbing infrasound and heat. They ran along catwalks suspended over the spire's primary drive core, a spinning singularity of contained energy. The air tasted of ozone and copper. Lyra led them, jumping gaps where the grating had rusted away, swinging from pipes with gymnastic ease. Jonah followed, heavier, slower, but relentless. "They will expect us at the main hangar," Lyra shouted over the roar of the engines. "So we go to the secondary launch bay," Jonah yelled back. "The garbage scows." They burst out of the reactor level onto a glass bridge that spanned the gap between the diplomatic ring and the industrial sectors. Below them, through the floor, the stars spun in a dizzying streak. At the end of the bridge, a squad of Dominion soldiers waited. They weren't medics this time. They were heavy infantry. "Ambush!" Jonah shouted, shoving Lyra behind a support stanchion as plasma fire erupted. Lyra peeked out. "There are too many." Suddenly, Sarai's voice crackled over the comm system. It wasn't a broadcast. It was a localized override. "Left," the child's voice whispered. "Not right." Lyra looked at the path ahead. The bridge split into a Y shape. The soldiers were clustered on the right fork, blocking the way to the hangars. The left fork led to a dead-end observation bubble. "She said left," Lyra said. "Oh, that's a dead end," Jonah argued, firing a burst of rounds. "Trust the story." Lyra grabbed his arm and pulled. They broke cover, sprinting toward the left fork. The soldiers on the right laughed, raising their heavy cannons to vaporize them. And then the right fork exploded. A coolant line beneath the bridge, stressed by the reactor fluctuations, ruptured. A geyser of superheated plasma sheared through the glass and steel of the right fork. The soldiers, the bridge, and the path to the main hangar vanished in a blinding flash of white light. The shockwave knocked Lyra and Jonah off their feet, sliding them into the observation bubble at the end of the left fork. They scrambled up, coughing. The path behind them was gone. The path ahead was a solid wall of glass. "We are trapped," Jonah rasped. "No," Lyra said. She pointed to a service hatch in the floor of the bubble. "The garbage chutes." They slid down the chute, landing in a pile of soft synthetic refuse in the loading bay of the lower decks. The smell was horrific, but they were alive. The bay was chaos. Alarms were blaring. Civilians, dock workers, mechanics, refugees were running toward the emergency shuttles. "There," Lyra pointed. A small, battered courier ship was sitting on a launch pad, its engines idling. The stealth ship that had taken Sarai was nowhere to be seen, but Lyra knew where they would take her. They would take her to the flagship. "We need that ship," Lyra said. They ran toward it, but as they reached the airlock, a blast door began to descend, sealing off the bay from the corridor. A group of civilians was running toward the door, pursued by a squad of the Council's purge troopers. If the door closed, the civilians would be saved, but the troopers would be locked out. If the door stayed open, the troopers would storm the bay and kill everyone, including Lyra and Jonah. But the troopers were firing. They were cutting down the stragglers. "Jonah!" Lyra shouted. "The door controls!" Jonah reached the control panel. He looked at the corridor. A family, a mother and 2 children, were 20 meters away, running for their lives. Behind them, the troopers were raising their rifles. If he waited for the family, the troopers would get inside. The courier ship would be destroyed. Sarai would be lost forever. If he closed the door, the family died. Jonah looked at Lyra. She was already on the ramp of the ship, her hand extended to him. She wasn't telling him what to do. She was waiting to see who he was. Jonah gritted his teeth, a sound like grinding stone. He slammed his fist onto the lockdown button. The heavy blast door slammed down. The scream of the mother on the other side was cut off instantly. Jonah stood there for a second, his hand on the panel, staring at the sealed metal. He had just killed innocents to save a probability. "Jonah!" Lyra yelled. "Move!" He turned and ran up the ramp. The airlock hissed shut behind him. Inside the cockpit, Lyra was already initiating the launch sequence. Jonah slumped into the co-pilot's seat, his face gray. "I locked them out," he whispered. Lyra looked at him. Her eyes were full of horror, but beneath it, there was a terrible, sharp understanding. She reached out and touched his arm. "You chose the future," she said softly. "Now we have to make sure it was worth it." The courier ship blasted out of the bay, streaking away from the Aurum spire and into the cold, indifferent dark. The courier ship had been a temporary shell, discarded as soon as they touched down on Station 9, a sprawling, rusting hive of commerce and crime that orbited a dead gas giant. They had descended from the docking bays into the bowels of the station, the so-called sump, where the air scrubbers were 20 years overdue for a filter change and the gravity plating hummed with a nauseating vibration. Lyra Voss walked through the crush of bodies, her head ducked low. In the gleaming corridors of the Aurum spire, her gray servant's uniform had rendered her invisible. Here, in the sweating, neon-drenched chaos of the sump, it was a beacon. It screamed of clean water, high-grade fabric, and proximity to power. Migrant workers with oil-stained skin jostled past them. Dockhands with cybernetic limbs loud enough to grind gears stared openly at Lyra. She felt their eyes like physical touches, sticky and threatening. "Keep your head down," Jonah Reed muttered. He was walking a half-step behind her, his body acting as a shield between her and the crowd. He had ditched his tactical armor in the ship, trading it for a grease-stained jacket he had stolen from a locker. But he still moved like a soldier. "We need to find new clothes. You look like a walking ransom payment." "I am aware," Lyra murmured. She held Sarai close to her side. The child was wrapped in a rough blanket they had salvaged, her face hidden. But she was shivering. "We have no currency, Jonah. And my biometrics are likely flagged on every credit exchange." "We do not use credits down here," Jonah said, steering them down a narrow alleyway that smelled of ozone and frying garlic. "We barter, but first, we hide." They found a temporary shelter in a maintenance alcove behind a massive heat exchanger. It was hot, noisy, and cramped, but it was out of the line of sight. Jonah slid the heavy grate shut, plunging them into semi-darkness illuminated only by the red pulse of the machinery. Sarai curled into a ball on a pile of cabling, her breathing shallow. Lyra sat beside her, stroking the child's hair. Jonah leaned against the opposite wall, watching them. The silence stretched, heavy with the memory of the blast door Jonah had closed on the family in the launch bay. "You are thinking about them," Lyra said softly. It was not a question. Jonah looked at his hands. In the red light, they looked stained, though he had scrubbed them raw in the ship's head. "I calculated the odds," Jonah said, his voice devoid of inflection. "If I had waited 5 seconds, the squad would have breached. We would be dead. Sarai would be gone." "It was a necessary evil," Lyra said. She did not mean it as comfort. She meant it as a categorization. Jonah let out a short, bitter laugh. "Necessary evil. That is what the briefing officer told me 10 years ago." Lyra looked up. 10 years ago? Jonah slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, legs extended. "I was intelligence, black ops, not this security guard babysitting duty. We had a target, a separatist leader hiding in a transport convoy. The order came down to drone strike the lead vehicle to stop the column. There were civilians on board, school children." He paused, rubbing his face with his palms. "I refused the order," Jonah said. "I jammed the signal. The target got away. My commanding officer told me I lacked the stomach for the big picture. They stripped my rank, wiped my pension, and sent me to the spire to check IDs at the door." He looked at Lyra, his eyes dark and hollow. "I told myself I did the right thing, but today I closed the door. I did exactly what they wanted me to do back then. I sacrificed the few to save the objective." Lyra moved across the small space. She did not touch him, but she sat close enough that he could feel her warmth. "You did not save an objective, Jonah," Lyra said firmly. "You saved a child, and you did not do it for the state, or the treaty, or the greater good. You did it for her. Does it make a difference to the people on the other side of the door?" Jonah asked. "No," Lyra said, "but it makes a difference to the man on this side." She hesitated, then pulled the collar of her tunic down slightly, revealing a small, intricate scar at the base of her throat. It was not a battle scar. It was a brand. "You asked me who I was," Lyra said. "You know the Asteri strictly regulate our bloodlines. We are bred for function. Warriors, scholars, laborers, and servants," Jonah said. "Servants are failed scholars," Lyra corrected. "But there is another line. The line that is not recorded. The line that was supposed to be extinct." Jonah looked at the brand. It was a stylized star inside a broken circle. "My name is not Voss," Lyra whispered. "My family held the stewardship of the northern nebulas before the Reformation. We were the guardians of the old ways, the ones who believed that leadership was a burden, not a privilege. When the Dominion centralized power, they erased us. I was a child. I was hidden, rebranded, and put into the service academies to be forgotten." She looked over at the sleeping form of Sarai. "Sarai is not just a random mutation," Lyra said. "She is a throwback. Her genetic markers are tied to my family's lineage. That is why I was assigned to her. The universe has a way of knotting threads together, even when people try to cut them." Jonah looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not just the beautiful woman or the capable fighter, but the exile. "We are a pair of ghosts," Jonah said quietly. "A soldier who wouldn't fight and a princess who scrubs floors." "We are alive," Lyra said. For now, they needed supplies. And for that, they needed the black market bazaar on level 4. Lyra had modified her uniform, tearing off the sleeves and rubbing grease into the pristine gray fabric. But she still walked with a spine of steel that drew attention. Jonah walked with a limp he didn't need to fake, his stolen jacket pulled tight. The bazaar was a sensory assault. Stalls sold everything from vat-grown meat to illegal memory chips. The noise was deafening, a cacophony of 12 different languages and the screech of grinding metal. They stopped at a stall draped in holographic curtains. The vendor was a spindly creature with 4 arms and a face that seemed to be made of shifting geometric plates. He was selling data pads and encrypted comms links. "We need a clean slate," Lyra said, stepping forward. She pitched her voice to the haughty, commanding tone of a noble. "A communication node that cannot be traced by the Dominion network, and we require it immediately." The vendor's geometric face shifted, plates clicking as they rearranged into an expression of boredom. "The lady speaks with a silver tongue," the vendor rasped, his voice buzzing like a broken speaker. "But silver tongues do not buy silicon. I do not trade in credits. The exchange rate is too volatile since the Spire incident." "We have information," Lyra said. "Codes from the diplomatic sector." "Old news," the vendor dismissed, waving a lower hand. "Everyone knows the treaty is dead. Boring. I am bored. Entertain me." Lyra blinked. "Entertain you?" "A joke," the vendor said. "A riddle, a story, something to make my gears spin. The currency of the bazaar is novelty. Human." He looked at Jonah. "Or whatever you are." Lyra stiffened. She knew etiquette, history, and combat. She did not know jokes. She tried to recall something from the barracks. A photon checks into a hotel," Lyra stammered. "The bellhop asks if he has any luggage. The photon says, 'No, I am traveling light.'" The vendor stared at her. The plates on his face did not move. "Pathetic," the vendor said. "That is from a physics textbook. Get out of my stall." "Wait," Jonah said, stepping forward. "How about this? A priest, a minister, and a rabbit walk into a blood bank." "Stop," the vendor hissed. "I have heard the rabbit one. It is a type O error." He reached for a button under the counter. "Leave, or I call the station guards." "Why did the star go to school?" The voice was small, cutting through the tension like a bell. Sarai stepped out from behind Jonah's legs. She had removed the heavy blanket, though she still wore the veil. The vendor looked down at the child. "Why?" "Because it wanted to be brighter." Sarai said softly. The vendor paused. "That is not a joke. That is a pun, and a weak one." "Wait," Sarai said. She tilted her head. "Knock, knock." The vendor hesitated. "Who is there?" "Interrupting timeline." "Interrupting time." "We are already dead," Sarai shouted, slamming her hand on the counter. The vendor jumped back, all 4 arms flailing. Then, a grinding, wheezing sound erupted from his chest. He was laughing. It sounded like a bag of bolts falling downstairs. "A temporal paradox joke," the vendor wheezed. "Delivery, timing, aggression, magnificent." He reached under the counter and tossed a sleek black data chip to Lyra. "Take it," the vendor gasped, wiping oil from his eyes. "And take the child away before she tells me how I die." Lyra grabbed the chip, staring at Sarai in shock. Sarai did not smile. She was gripping the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. "Thank you," Lyra whispered to the vendor, and they vanished back into the crowd. As they moved deeper into the station, seeking a transport to the upper orbital ring, Sarai's condition began to deteriorate. It started with a stumble. Then, she stopped in the middle of a corridor, gasping for air. Lyra knelt instantly, pulling the veil aside. Blood was streaming from Sarai's nose, dark and heavy. Her eyes, usually pale and vacant, were darting rapidly back and forth, tracking things that were not there. "It is too bright," Sarai whimpered. "The future. It is all sharp edges, it cuts." "We need a doctor," Jonah said, scanning the crowd. "No doctor can fix this," Lyra said, wiping the blood with her sleeve. Her mind is trying to process raw causality. It is like staring into a sun without a filter. "We need to get her to the library." "The library?" Jonah asked. "The Library of Echoes," Lyra said, lifting Sarai into her arms. "It is an orbital archive on the station's zenith. They store stories as living light. Narrative is the only way her mind can organize the visions. If we can get her into the stream, the stories will act as a buffer." "The zenith is high security," Jonah said. "Rich people territory." "Then we climb," Lyra said. They found a cargo elevator that bypassed the passenger decks, hacking the controls with the chip the vendor had given them. It took them up, out of the smog of the sump, past the neon of the commercial districts, and into the silent, sterile elegance of the Zenith Ring. The Library of Echoes was not a building. It was a structure of glass and silence suspended in the vacuum outside the station's main ring, connected by a transparent tube. Inside, millions of strands of light floated in the air, each one a story, a history, a memory preserved in photon streams. But before they could enter, they needed to rest. The climb and the stress had exhausted them. They found an access node, a small maintenance room used by the librarians, and locked the door. It was cramped, a single bench, a control console, and a dim emergency light. Lyra laid Sarai on the bench, covering her with the blanket. The child fell into a restless sleep, the nosebleed finally stopping. Lyra slumped against the wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. She closed her eyes, her chest heaving. "She is burning up," Lyra whispered. Jonah sat next to her. There was barely room for two of them on the floor. His leg pressed against hers. The contact was electric. "We will get her there," Jonah said. "Tomorrow morning, when the shift changes." Lyra turned her head. Their faces were inches apart. She could see the fatigue lines around his eyes, the stubble on his jaw. He looked wrecked, but he was still here. He hadn't left. "Why are you still here, Jonah?" Lyra asked softly. "You could have taken the chip and vanished. You could be halfway to the outer rim by now." "I don't run anymore," Jonah said. His voice was rough, low. "And I don't leave people behind. Not again." He looked at her lips, then up to her eyes. "And maybe I just wanted to see what happens next in the story." Lyra let out a breath that was half a laugh, half a sob. "This is a terrible story. It is full of blood and bad jokes." "It has its moments," Jonah said. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face. He waited. He was giving her the choice, the power. Lyra closed the distance. The kiss was not frantic. It was heavy. It tasted of adrenaline and desperation. But beneath that, there was a profound, grounding tenderness. It was an anchoring in a universe that was spinning out of control. This was the one fixed point. Jonah's hand cupped the back of her neck, his thumb stroking the sensitive skin behind her ear. Lyra's hands found the lapels of his jacket, gripping tight, pulling him closer. They shifted, tangling together in the small space, seeking warmth, seeking proof that they were still alive. "I have you," Jonah murmured against her mouth. "I have you, Lyra." "I know," she whispered back. And for the first time in her life, the admission didn't feel like a weakness. It felt like armor. They slept in a tangle of limbs, waking only when the datapad in Jonah's pocket began to vibrate with a priority alert. Jonah groaned, extracting his arm from under Lyra's head. He pulled the pad out and tapped the screen. The blue light illuminated his face, washing out the softness of the morning and replacing it with hard angles. "Lyra," he said, "wake up." Lyra was awake instantly. "What is it?" Jonah turned the screen toward her. It was a news feed from the Aurum Spire. "Treaty suspended. Emergency council formed to restore order." The image showed High Minister Kale standing on a podium, flanked by human generals. "The Dominion and Earth Command have agreed to a joint security council." Jonah read, "To combat the rising terrorist threat and protect the integrity of the alliance." "Terrorist threat," Lyra said bitterly. "Us." "It gets worse," Jonah said. "They have invoked the Concord Override. Martial law is in effect across the sector." Sarai sat up on the bench. She looked frail, her skin almost translucent. "The wolves have agreed on how to share the sheep," Sarai said weakly. "We have to move," Lyra said, standing up and smoothing her uniform. The intimacy of the night before was packed away, stored in a box marked later. "The library is our only chance to stabilize her." The entrance to the Library of Echoes was unguarded. The librarians were scholars, not soldiers, and they believed knowledge should be free. They walked into the main atrium. It was breathtaking. The air was filled with ribbons of golden light, drifting like seaweed in a current. Each ribbon was a narrative thread. If you touched one, the story unfolded in your mind. "It is beautiful," Sarai whispered. She reached out, her hand trembling. "Find a calm one," Lyra said. "Find a story about a garden or a sleeping ocean." Sarai's fingers brushed a ribbon of light that was a deep crimson red. "No!" Lyra shouted, realizing the color too late. The light flared. It wasn't a garden. It was a war epic. But Sarai didn't just see the recorded story. Her mind twisted the narrative, using the projection technology of the library to manifest her vision of the future. The air in front of them shimmered and coalesced into a solid holographic scene. It was Lyra. She was wearing a robe of royal purple, standing on a platform of black glass. In her hand was a long silver dagger. At her feet lay Jonah. He was looking up at her, his chest a ruin of blood. He was dying, and Lyra was the one holding the blade. The projection was so real Lyra could smell the blood. She stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. "No," she gasped. "That is not... I would never..." Jonah stared at the image of his own death. His face was unreadable. He looked at the holographic Lyra, cold, regal, a killer, and then at the real Lyra, who was shaking with horror. "It is just a metaphor," Jonah said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It is symbolic. Lyra, it means sacrifice or change." "It means you die," Sarai whispered. She was crying, the tears tracking through the dried blood on her face. "And she kills you." "Fascinating," a voice boomed from the shadows. "Utterly terrifying, but fascinating." A figure emerged from the stacks of light. It was a tall being of indeterminate gender, wearing a robe made of stitched-together scroll paper. They wore spectacles with 4 distinct lenses. "I am the archivist," the figure said, bowing theatrically. "And you, little one, are a walking narrative hazard." "Help her," Lyra pleaded, gesturing to Sarai. "She cannot stop the visions." The archivist adjusted their spectacles, peering at Sarai. "Precognition is a rude habit. It skips to the end of the book without appreciating the prose. Her mind is trying to map time onto the only structure she understands. Stories. But time is not a story. Time is a mess." The archivist turned to Lyra, and the lenses clicked. zooming in. "And you," the archivist said, their voice dropping the comedic lilt. "I have seen your face in the forbidden catalogs, the lost lineage of the Nebula Wardens. You are not a maid, my dear. You are a ghost story that the Council tries to keep from the children." "I am no one," Lyra said defensively. "You are a symbol," the archivist corrected. "And symbols are dangerous things to bring into a library." Suddenly, the ribbons of light turned an angry, pulsing red. "Intrusion detected," the library's AI announced calmly. The main doors at the far end of the atrium blew inward. A squad of 12 mercenaries in tactical gear stormed in. They didn't look like standard security. They moved with the precision of a hit squad, and on their chests, they wore the emblem of the new emergency council. "Secure the asset," the lead mercenary shouted. "Terminate the escorts." "They have credentials," Jonah yelled, pulling Lyra and Sarai behind a stack of hard-light encyclopedias. "They are legal." "Since when do mercenaries care about the law?" Lyra shouted, drawing a kinetic pistol she had taken from the courier ship. "Since the law became a weapon," the archivist cackled, throwing a handful of data crystals into the air. "Run! I will confuse their targeting sensors with high-density poetry." The archivist tapped a console, and the air filled with booming recited verses of ancient Klingon opera and Vogon poetry. The mercenaries stumbled, clutching their audio receptors. "Go!" Jonah ordered, firing blindly over the cover. Lyra grabbed Sarai. The child was limp, her energy spent by the projection. As Lyra lifted her, Sarai grabbed Lyra's collar, pulling her down. "Lyra," Sarai whispered. The sound was terrified, but clear. "I have you," Lyra said. "We are going." "The vision," Sarai gasped. "It is true. You have to do it." "Do what?" Lyra asked, pausing amidst the chaos. "You will save me," Sarai said, looking directly into Lyra's eyes with a terrible, infinite sadness. "By losing him." A laser bolt shattered the light stack next to them. "Lyra!" Jonah screamed. "Move!" Lyra tore her eyes away from the child and ran, the prophecy clinging to her heart like a shroud. The stolen courier ship was named the Needle, and it lived up to the title. It was narrow, fast, and felt like it was stitching the fabric of space together as it screamed through the unstable lanes. The lanes were a graveyard of physics. Here, gravity folded in on itself, and starlight bent at sharp angles, creating a kaleidoscope of navigational hazards. Behind them, 3 Dominion drones pursued with relentless, mathematical precision. These were not the clumsy security bots of the Spire. These were hunter-killers. Sleek black darts painted with the golden seal of the High Council. Jonah Reed fought the controls. The yoke bucked in his hands as the ship rode the gravity wake of a collapsing star fragment. Sweat dripped down his nose, stinging his eyes. "Shields are down to 40%, Jonah shouted over the roar of the engines. "Lyra, I need you on the countermeasures." Lyra Voss sat in the co-pilot seat, her fingers flying across the console. She was still wearing the torn, grease-stained uniform from the station, but her face was set in a mask of icy concentration. "The jamming frequencies are not working," Lyra said. "They have adapted to our signature. They are locking on." "Then we need to jump," Jonah said. "We have to hit the slipstream before they fire." "We cannot jump here," Lyra said, her voice rising. "The navigational computer is throwing errors. It says the lane is too volatile. If we jump, we could end up inside a sun. If we stay, we end up as dust," Jonah snapped. "I am overriding the safety protocols." "Do not!" "Left engine," a small voice said from the back of the cockpit. Jonah and Lyra froze for a fraction of a second. Sarai was strapped into the jump seat, her small body swallowed by the crash webbing. Her veil was askew, revealing one pale, unseeing eye. "What did you say?" Jonah asked. "The left engine," Sarai said. Her voice was calm, a terrifying contrast to the screaming alarms. "Cut the power to the left engine now." "That will put us in a spin," Jonah argued. "We will crash into that asteroid field." "The asteroid is not there," Sarai said. "The sensors are lying. The light is old. Cut the engine." "Jonah," Lyra said, looking at the tactical display which showed a massive rock directly in their path. "Do it." "This is suicide," Jonah growled. "Do it," Lyra commanded. Jonah slammed the throttle for the left thruster to 0. The needle lurched violently, spinning into a flat, nauseating rotation. The ship hurled itself directly at the massive asteroid on the screen. Jonah clenched his jaw, waiting for impact, waiting for death. They passed right through the rock. It was a phantom signal, a gravitational ghost. The ship spun through the empty space where the sensors believed a rock existed. The Dominion drones, following the logic of their programming, swerved to avoid the non-existent obstacle. They banked hard right, directly into the path of a real undetected debris cloud. 2 of the drones vaporized instantly in flashes of orange fire. The third clipped a jagged shard of iron and spiraled away into the dark, spinning out of control. Jonah stabilized the ship, his hands shaking. He pushed the throttle forward and they punched into the clear black of open space. "How?" Jonah breathed. "How did you know the sensors were wrong?" "I didn't," Sarai said, closing her eyes. "I just saw us flying through it. And I saw the machines burning." Jonah looked back at the child, then at Lyra. The silence in the cockpit was heavy. It wasn't just relief. It was the weight of traveling with a weapon that looked like a little girl. "We are clear," Lyra said quietly. "Set a course for the moon of Xylos. We need to land before the fuel cells give out." Jonah keyed in the coordinates, but his eyes lingered on Lyra. "You trusted her, blindly." "She is not the one who is blind, Jonah," Lyra said, staring out at the stars. "And neither am I. Not anymore." Xylos was a moon wrapped in a permanent bruising storm. The city of Tempest Hollow clung to the canyon walls, a vertical sprawl of neon lights and rain-slicked metal. It was a place run by trade guilds, where the law was a suggestion and a bribe was a receipt. They landed the Needle on a private pad controlled by the Dockworkers Guild. It cost them the last of the credits Jonah had siphoned from the courier ship's emergency account. The rain here was acidic and glowed with a faint, bioluminescent blue. It coated everything in a shimmering, toxic sheen. "Cover your face," Lyra told Sarai, adjusting the hood of the oversized coat they had stolen from the ship's locker. "The fumes are not good for you." They walked through the streets. The city was a sensory overload of noise and commerce. Vendors hawked synthetic organs, data packets, and prayers. Drones flitted overhead like buzzing flies. "We need a contact," Jonah said, pulling his collar up. "I used to know a broker here, a man named Silas. He deals in information that people want to forget. If anyone knows where to find a scientist who disappeared, it is him." "Can we trust him?" Lyra asked. Her eyes scanned the rooftops, checking for snipers. "We can trust his greed," Jonah said. "Silas never sells a friend unless the price is astronomical. And right now, we don't look like we are worth much." They found Silas in a back room of a gambling den that smelled of ozone and cheap liquor. He was a human with cybernetic eyes that whirred as he focused on them. "Jonah Reed," Silas said, leaning back in his chair. "I heard you were dead, or worse, working for the diplomatic corps." "I am freelance now," Jonah said. He placed the data chip from the black market vendor on the table. It was empty now. but the casing was platinum. "We are looking for Dr. Aris, the neurobiologist." Silas picked up the chip, weighing it. "Aris, that is a name that carries a lot of dust. He worked for the Dominion, top-level research into cognitive anomalies. Then he vanished 2 years ago." "Where is he?" Lyra asked. She stepped forward, letting the light catch the hard line of her jaw. She didn't look like a maid. She looked like someone who gave orders. Silas's mechanical eyes clicked. He didn't leave the moon. He was taken in by the Technomancers Guild. They keep him in a gilded cage. He attends the high gala tonight at the Spire of Rain. It is a masquerade. Very exclusive. "We need to get in," Jonah said. "Impossible." Silas laughed. "Tickets cost more than your ship, and the security is DNA locked." Lyra reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small, heavy ring. It was silver, etched with the same broken circle brand on her neck. She slammed it onto the table. "Get us invitations," Lyra said, "and clothes that fit." Silas stared at the ring. His smirk vanished. "This crest, this is pre-Reformation, this is royal tech." "It is payment," Lyra said. "Do we have a deal?" Silas looked at her, a new calculation running behind his lenses. "Tonight, the service entrance. I will have the credentials ready." The Spire of Rain was a needle of glass piercing the storm clouds. Inside, the gala was a swirling ocean of color and light. The elite of the sector were there, Asteri nobles in robes of woven light, human industrialists in diamond-studded suits, and guild masters with gold-plated cybernetics. Jonah felt like he was wearing a straitjacket. The tuxedo Silas had procured was expensive, but it felt tight across his shoulders. He tugged at his cuffs, scanning the room. "Stop fidgeting," a voice murmured in his ear. "You look fine." Jonah turned and lost his breath. Lyra Voss was not wearing a maid's uniform. She was wearing a gown of midnight blue silk that seemed to flow like liquid water. It was cut high at the neck and low at the back, revealing the long, elegant line of her spine. She wore a silver mask that covered her eyes. But nothing could hide the way she moved. She moved like a blade wrapped in silk. "You look..." Jonah started, then cleared his throat. "You blend in." "I was raised for this," Lyra said, her voice tight. "Smile, Jonah. You are my escort. Try to look like you are enjoying my company rather than scanning for exits." "I am doing both," Jonah muttered. He offered her his arm. They moved through the crowd. Sarai was hidden in a secure maintenance closet on the lower level, monitoring the security feeds via a datapad. They could hear her small voice in their earpieces. "Target is on the 3rd balcony," Sarai whispered. "Dr. Aris. He is surrounded by 3 guards." "We need to get him alone," Lyra said. "Jonah, create a distraction." "What kind of distraction?" "Dance with me," Lyra said. She pulled him onto the dance floor. The music was a slow, throbbing electronic waltz. Jonah put his hand on her waist. The silk was cool, but the skin beneath it was burning. They moved together. Jonah was not a dancer, but Lyra led him with subtle pressure, guiding his steps. They spun, the world blurring into streaks of gold and blue. "You are good at this," Jonah said, his voice rough. "Too good for a servant." "We all play roles," Lyra said. She stepped closer, her chest brushed against his. "Tell me, Jonah, if you knew the truth, would you still be holding me?" "I am holding you now," Jonah said. The scent of her, rain and lavender, filled his head. The danger of the room faded, replaced by the terrifying proximity of her body. "I don't care about the past." "You should," Lyra whispered, "because the past is what is chasing us." The music swelled. They were inches apart, Jonah's hand slid up her back, resting between her shoulder blades. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to drag her out of this room and away from the war and the prophecy. He saw the same hunger in her eyes, raw and terrified. "Now," Lyra said, breaking the spell. She spun away from him, colliding deliberately with a waiter carrying a tray of crystal flutes. The crash was spectacular. Glass shattered. Gasps rippled through the crowd. In the chaos, Jonah slipped away, moving toward the third balcony. He found Dr. Eris in a private alcove, trying to wipe champagne off his velvet sleeve. The scientist was an old Asteri, his face lined with grief. "Dr. Aris," Jonah said, stepping out of the shadows. He held a stun baton low at his side. "Don't scream." Aris looked up. He didn't look scared. He looked relieved. "You are the one with the child." "How do you know that?" Jonah asked. "Because I built the cage," Aris said, "and I knew she would eventually break it." Lyra slipped into the alcove a second later, having vanished from the dance floor. "Doctor, we need the key." "It is not a key," Aris said, his voice trembling. "It is a frequency." He tapped his temple. "The child, Sarai. She was born with the sight, the true sight. It drove her ancestors mad, the council. They wanted to harness it. They forced me to implant a chrononeural regulator." "To cure her?" Lyra asked. "To control her," Aris spat. "The implant suppresses the chaotic visions, yes, but it also filters them. It allows the council to feed her narrative inputs. They read her stories that correspond to the futures they want. Her mind latches onto the metaphor, and her gift amplifies that specific probability." Lyra felt sick. "They are not predicting the future. They are manufacturing it." "She is a probability engine," Aris said, "and the master control, the device that can override the implant or shut it down. I don't have it." "Who does?" Jonah demanded. "High Minister Kale," Aris said. "He keeps it on his person at all times. It is the scepter he carries, the symbol of his office." "The propaganda tool," Lyra whispered. "He holds the key to the future in his hand." "There is more," Aris said. He looked at Lyra. "The implant is degrading. If it is not removed, the feedback loop will kill her within a week. Her brain will burn out." "How do we remove it?" Jonah asked. "You need the scepter," Aris said, "and you need to bring her to me. I can do the surgery, but you must hurry." "Thank you," Lyra said. "Do not thank me," Aris said, turning away. "I am the one who put the monster in her head." They made it back to the Needle just as the storm intensified. The rain was hammering against the hull, sounding like gunfire. Inside the small mess hall, the air was thick with tension. Sarai was sleeping in the bunk, exhausted. Jonah stood by the airlock, cleaning his weapon. He didn't look up when Lyra entered. "You gave Silas the ring," Jonah said. "It got us in," Lyra said. She was still wearing the blue gown, but the mask was gone. She looked regal and tired. "That crest," Jonah said. "The archivist called you a symbol. Silas called it royal tech. Who are you?" "Lyra." Lyra leaned against the bulkhead. She crossed her arms, a defensive gesture that looked small on her. "My name is Lyra Astria," she said. The name seemed to hang in the air, heavy and old. "I am the last daughter of the House of Astria, the family that ruled the Dominion before the Council's coup." Jonah stopped cleaning the gun. He looked at her. "You are the queen." "I am a fugitive," Lyra said. "I was 5 when they killed my parents. They let me live because I was re-educated. They made me a servant to mock my bloodline. They assigned me to Sarai because they thought it was poetic justice. The failed queen serving the broken oracle." "You could have rallied support," Jonah said. There are rebels. We saw them. I ran, Lyra said, her voice cracking. I ran because I know the history of my family. To hold the throne, you have to be ruthless. You have to trade lives for stability. I didn't want to be a ruler. I just wanted to be free. And now, Jonah asked, now I have no choice, Lyra said. Sarai is dying. The only way to save her is to take the scepter from Kale. And to do that, I have to stop running. Sarai stirred in the bunk. She sat up, her eyes wide behind the veil. A queen must choose who burns, Sarai whispered. Lyra flinched. Sarai? It is the line from the first story, Sarai said. The one you read me. The dragon and the village. A queen must choose who burns. Suddenly, the ship's comm system crackled to life. It wasn't a hail. It was a system-wide broadcast. A hologram of High Minister Kale appeared in the center of the room. He looked calm, benevolent. He was holding a golden scepter. Citizens of the Dominion, Kale said. We have located the terrorists responsible for the attack on the spire. They are hiding on the moon of Xylos. Jonah stepped forward. He knows. To the woman known as Lyra, Kale continued, looking directly into the camera. We know your true heritage. We offer you a bargain. Surrender the child. Return her to our care. If you do, your past will be erased. You will be granted a lordship in the Outer Rim. You will be free. Lyra stared at the image. But if you resist, Kale said, his voice hardening, we will initiate the security purge. We will glass the city of Tempest Hollow. 3 million people will die, and their blood will be on your hands. The hologram flickered and died. Silence filled the ship. We have to give her up, Jonah said. Lyra spun on him. What? 3 million people! Lyra! Jonah said, his voice desperate. We can't let them die, then we hand Sarai over. We live to fight another day. If we give her back, she dies, Lyra shouted. Or worse, she becomes a slave forever. They will use her to enslave the entire galaxy. It is one life against millions, Jonah shouted back. That is the math. That is the choice. I am done with the math, Lyra screamed. She pushed him, hard. I am done with necessary evils. If we give her up, we are no better than them. We are just different jailers. So you will let the city burn? Jonah asked. Is that the queen talking? No, Lyra said, tears streaming down her face. That is the mother talking. I am the only mother she has. Jonah stared at her. The anger drained out of him, leaving him hollow. He looked at Sarai, who was watching them with terrifying calmness. He walked over to Lyra. He took her face in his hands. Then we don't give her up, Jonah said. And we don't let the city burn. How? Lyra sobbed. We take the fight to them, Jonah said. We steal the scepter. Tonight. He kissed her. It was a kiss of salt and fear, a seal on a death warrant. They held each other, 2 specks of dust against a hurricane. I choose you, Jonah whispered against her forehead, and I choose her. Let the rest of the universe figure itself out. A chime from the cockpit interrupted them. It was a private channel. Silas. Jonah. Silas's voice came through, sounding distorted. You need to leave. Now. Silas? Jonah asked. What is happening? I am sorry, Silas said. They offered me a seat on the guild council. The price was coordinates. Silas, you son of a... A massive boom shook the ship. Lyra ran to the viewport. The sky above Tempest Hollow was no longer black. It was gray, filled with the hull of a massive ship. The council's flagship, the Sovereign, was descending through the clouds. It hung over the city like a falling moon, its weapon ports glowing red. They are here, Sarai whispered. Get to the pilot seat, Jonah yelled, running for the cockpit. We are taking off. We can't outrun that, Lyra said, looking at the flagship. It covers the horizon. We aren't running, Jonah said, firing up the engines. We are docking. Lyra looked at him. What? They want the child, Jonah said, his eyes wild. So we are going to deliver her, right to the front door. And then we are going to burn the house down. The landing was not a docking. It was a controlled crash. Jonah brought the needle down into the architectural canyons of Tempest Hollow, skidding across a rain-slicked landing pad that was far too short for their velocity. Metal screamed against permacrete, sparks showering like fireworks in the gloom. The ship slammed into a retaining wall, the impact throwing them all against their restraints. Everyone out! Jonah shouted, punching the release on his harness. Move! They scrambled out of the airlock into a nightmare. The Sovereign, the massive flagship of the Council, hung low over the city, blotting out the storm clouds. From its belly, it birthed swarms of hunter drones, sleek, black machines that descended like locusts. The streets of Tempest Hollow were flooding with panic. Martial law sirens wailed, a dissonant chord that vibrated in the teeth. Propaganda screens the size of buildings flickered to life, showing High Minister Kale's face. Citizens, the giant face boomed. Shelter in place. Compliance is safety. Resistance is mathematical error. A drone swooped down, its red eye scanning a group of dock workers huddling near a crate. It powered up a stun cannon. Lyra moved. She didn't run. She flowed. She vaulted over a railing, landing between the drone and the workers. With a single fluid motion, she drew her kinetic pistol and fired 3 shots. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks and oil. Go! Lyra shouted to the workers. Get underground! Jonah was right behind her, his rifle shouldered. He spotted a family trapped in a hover car that had stalled in the intersection. 2 drones were circling it. Cover me! Jonah yelled. Lyra spun, taking a knee. She fired a suppressing pattern, drawing the drone's fire. Plasma bolts sizzled past her head, singeing the air. Jonah sprinted to the car, wrenching the door open. He pulled a terrified father and 2 children out. Run to the maintenance tunnels. Jonah roared, pointing to a grate Lyra had already blasted open. For 20 minutes, it was chaos. They fought their way block by block, carving a path through the occupation. Lyra was a blur of violence, her blue gown torn and stained with soot, but she moved with the terrifying elegance of a royal guard. She didn't waste movement. Every shot hit, every strike shattered metal. But Sarai was falling apart. The child was clinging to Jonah's back, strapped in with a makeshift harness. She was screaming, but not from fear. Too many! Sarai shrieked, clutching her head. They stop and they go, the red line and the black line, I can't see the path. They ducked into a narrow alleyway, sheltering behind a dumpster as a patrol craft roared overhead. Jonah unbuckled Sarai, setting her down. She was hyperventilating, blood streaming from both nostrils. Her eyes were rolling back, seeing 1,000 potential deaths for every second that passed. She is fracturing, Jonah gasped, wiping rain from his face. The proximity to the flagship, the probability engine on board is resonating with her implant. Lyra holstered her weapon and grabbed Sarai's face. Sarai, Lyra said firmly. Look at me. I see fire, Sarai sobbed. I see Jonah dead. I see Jonah living. I see the city glassed. It is all happening at once. Listen to my voice, Lyra commanded. She didn't use her command tone. She used her storyteller voice, low, rhythmic, hypnotic. Once, there was a mountain that stood in the center of the world. The wind blew, and the rain fell, but the mountain did not move. Sarai's breath hitched. The... the mountain? The mountain was stone, Lyra continued, her thumb stroking the child's cheek. It did not care about the storm. It only cared about the root. Deep, deep in the dark. Hold on to the root. Sarai. The words acted as an anchor. The narrative gave Sarai's chaotic mind a single linear structure to cling to. Her breathing slowed. The frantic darting of her eyes ceased. The root, Sarai whispered. I am holding it. Good, Lyra said. She kissed the child's forehead, then looked up at Jonah. Her eyes were hard. We need to get off the street. The rebels, Jonah said. Silas sold us out, but he mentioned a location before he cut the feed. The Temple of Dust. It is an old guild sanctuary beneath the city. The Temple of Dust was a cavernous space filled with silent, rusting machinery from the moon's first colonization. It was also filled with armed resistance fighters. When Lyra and Jonah stumbled in, weapons were raised. But a woman stepped forward, a scarred, gray-haired captain wearing a patched flight suit. Hold fire, the woman ordered. She looked at Lyra, her eyes widening as she saw the silver ring on Lyra's finger. The archivist sent a message. He said a ghost was coming. We are not ghosts yet, Lyra said, supporting Sarai. But we are close. I am Kaelin, the woman said. We have been waiting for you, or someone like you. She led them to a makeshift command center. On a bank of screens, data streams were scrolling. We tapped into the Sovereign's downlink, Kaelin said. We have the truth recordings. She tapped a key. A holographic recording flickered to life. It showed a meeting of the council from 5 years ago. High Minister Kael was speaking. The population is too comfortable, Kael said in the recording. Peace breeds stagnation. We need a threat. We need to remind them why they need walls. We will arrange the attack on the convoy, another minister said. Blame it on the separatists. It will justify the budget increase for the drone program. Jonah stared at the screen. The blood drained from his face. The convoy, Jonah whispered. My convoy. Yes, Kaelin said gently. The target you refused to strike. He was a council agent. The civilians were the intended victims. They wanted a massacre to push the Security Act through. You didn't fail a mission, soldier. You ruined a photo op. Jonah stood very still. For 10 years, he had carried the weight of his disgrace. He had believed he was too soft for the hard choices of the universe. But the hard choices were lies. The necessary evils were just evils dressed up in bureaucracy. His hands curled into fists. The shaking that had plagued him since the crash stopped. They played us, Jonah said. His voice was not loud, but it filled the room. They played all of us. And they are doing it again, Lyra said, pointing to another screen showing the treaty summit schedules. They plan to detonate a bomb at the summit tomorrow. They will blame the rebels. It will give them the excuse to invoke total martial law across the Dominion. We have to stop them, Kaelin said. But we don't have the firepower to breach the flagship. You don't need firepower, Lyra said. You need a story. She looked at Jonah. We are going to steal the narrative. We are going to infiltrate the Sovereign, find the broadcast core, and play these recordings to the entire galaxy. And while we are there, we are going to take the scepter and free Sarai. Infiltrate? Kaelin scoffed. That ship is a fortress. It is a palace, Lyra corrected. And I know how palaces work. They have service entrances. They have blind spots for the people they think are invisible. They had an hour to prepare. The rebels provided gear, magnetic grapples, localized jamming units, and a stealth shuttle that could get them to the flagship's hull. Jonah found Lyra in a quiet corner of the temple, checking the charge on her pistol. She looked up as he approached. You are shaking again, Lyra said. Not from fear, Jonah said. He sat down beside her. I am angry, Lyra. I am so angry I feel like I could burn that ship down with my bare hands. Save the fire, Lyra said. We will need it. Jonah looked at her. The prophecy. The one Sarai saw in the library. You standing over me, my blood on your hands. Lyra looked away. It was just a metaphor. The archivist said, I don't care if it is a metaphor or a map. Jonah interrupted. He took her hand. I am terrified of it. I don't want to die. I finally found a reason to be alive. Lyra squeezed his hand, her grip bone-crushing. But, Jonah said, his voice dropping to a whisper, if that is the cost, if the only way to save her and to break this cycle is for me to lose, then I accept it. Lyra turned to him, her violet eyes fierce. I do not accept it. Lyra, no, she said. I am done with stories where the hero dies to teach a lesson. I am writing a new one. She leaned in, her forehead resting against his. I vow to you, Jonah Reed, she whispered. I will not let you become a tragedy. I will burn the world before I let you go. It was a promise that terrified him, because he knew she meant it. Okay, Jonah said, standing up and addressing the small team. Here is the plan. We fly the stealth shuttle into the flagship's waste disposal vent. It opens every 40 minutes. We have a 3-minute window. Disposal vent, Sarai said, wrinkling her nose. Classy. It is the only unshielded port, Jonah said. Once inside, we split up. Lyra and I go to the bridge to secure the scepter and the broadcast. Sarai, you stay in the shuttle with the comms open. You are our eyes. You tell us what is coming before it gets there. I need a code name, Sarai said seriously. Jonah blinked. A what? A code name, Sarai insisted. For the comms. You cannot just be Jonah. That is boring. And Lyra cannot be Lyra. The bad men know those names. Lyra looked at Jonah, a rare smile touching her lips. She has a point. Standard operational security. Fine, Jonah sighed. I will be Eagle. Lyra is Star. No, Sarai said instantly. Those are terrible. You are Captain Fuzzy Boots. Jonah stared at her. I am what? Captain Fuzzy Boots, Sarai repeated. No, because you are grumpy but soft. Lyra choked back a laugh. It fits. I am not soft, Jonah grumbled. And what is Lyra? She is the sharp lady, Sarai said, because she cuts. The humor hung in the air for a second, a fragile bubble of normalcy in the face of death. Jonah looked at the child, the weapon, the oracle, the girl who just wanted to tell jokes, and felt his heart break and harden all at once. All right, Jonah said. Captain Fuzzy Boots and the sharp lady are moving out. The infiltration was grueling. The waste vent was a vertical shaft of slime and freezing air. They climbed using magnetic boots, fighting the updraft. They emerged into the lower maintenance decks of the Sovereign. The ship was a city in itself. Miles of corridors lined with gold and white paneling. It was silent, sterile, and terrifyingly vast. 2 guards approaching the junction. Sarai's voice whispered in their ears, "Wait 5 seconds." Jonah and Lyra pressed themselves into an alcove. 5 seconds later, 2 heavy troopers marched past, their boots clanking on the deck. They didn't even look at the alcove. Clear, Sarai whispered. They moved up, level by level. As they reached the command decks, the architecture changed. The walls became mirrored, floor-to-ceiling panels that reflected their images endlessly. Mirrored halls, Lyra whispered. They distort depth perception. It is a defense against assassins. You cannot tell how far away your target is. They moved through the kaleidoscope, 1,000 Lyras and 1,000 Jonahs moving in unison. They reached a massive door marked Royal Secure Sector. There was no keypad, only a biometric scanner. "This is it," Jonah said. "If this doesn't work, we trip the alarms." Lyra stepped forward. She pulled off her glove. She placed her hand on the scanner. The machine hummed. A blue light scanned her palm, reading the genetic markers that had been hunted for 20 years. "Identity confirmed," a smooth, synthetic voice announced. "Welcome, Your Majesty. The House of Astria is recognized." The heavy doors hissed open. Jonah looked at Lyra. He had known, theoretically, but seeing the enemy's own technology bow to her was different. She really was the queen, and she was breaking into her own stolen throne room. They didn't find the bridge. They found the implant control chamber first. It was a circular room dominated by a massive holographic map of the galaxy. In the center was a chair, a smaller version of the one Sarai sat in back on the spire. Cables and data feeds hung from the ceiling like vines. "This is where they do it," Lyra said, her voice shaking. "This is where they steer her." She walked to the console. The screens were active. They showed a timeline of the future, branching into thousands of paths. But most of the paths were grayed out, blocked. Only one path was highlighted in gold, the path of total dominion control. "Look," Jonah said, pointing to the input logs. "They aren't just reading her visions, they are feeding her stories." The log showed a list of narratives uploaded to Sarai's implant: the obedient child, the necessary war, the traitor's death. "They curate the metaphors," Lyra said, fury cold in her gut. "They tell her a story about a traitor dying, and her mind finds the future where that happens and locks it in. They are using her imagination to collapse the probability wave." "We have to shut it down," Jonah said. "Where is the interface?" Lyra found the central node. It was a physical connection, a port that would link to the Master Scepter. But right now, it was running on automatic mode. "I can disable the receiver," Lyra said, "but it will shock her. The feedback will be massive." "Do it." Sarai's voice came over the comms. It was weak, strained. "I do it, Lyra. I want to see." "It will hurt," Lyra warned. "I am already hurting," Sarai said. "Cut the string." Lyra grabbed the bundle of cables. She didn't have tools. She used brute force. She planted her feet and ripped the interface panel out of the console. Sparks showered the room. Alarms blared instantly. Over the comms, Sarai screamed. It was a high, thin sound that tore through Jonah's heart. "Sarai!" Jonah shouted. Then, silence. "Sarai," Lyra whispered. "I am here." Sarai's voice came back. It was different. The reed-thin quality was gone. It sounded deep, resonant, ancient. "The noise, it is gone." "What do you see?" Lyra asked. "Everything," Sarai said. "I see the stars. I see the choices. I see you." "You see me?" Lyra asked. "No," Sarai said softly. "I see you. Not the maid, not the queen, just Lyra." It was an inversion. The blind child, for the first time, was seeing the person, not the prophecy. "They are coming," Sarai said, her voice snapping back to urgency. 12 guards and the High Minister. They are at the door. The doors to the chamber blew inward. Jonah dove behind the console, firing his rifle. Lyra rolled to the side, taking cover behind a pillar. Troopers flooded the room, their armor gleaming. Plasma fire chewed up the holographic map. "Cease fire," a voice commanded. High Minister Kale strode into the room. He was holding the golden scepter. He looked exactly as he had on the broadcast, calm, patrician, and utterly soulless. Enough, Kyle said. The building is surrounded. Your shuttle has been located. We can incinerate the child with a single command. Jonah stood up, aiming his rifle at Kale's head. Drop the scepter. I think not, Kale said. He pressed a button on the scepter. Jonah doubled over, screaming. His armor seized up, the electronic weave locking rigid. He fell to the floor, paralyzed. Override codes, Kale said smoothly. We built your gear. Officer Reed, did you think we couldn't control it? He turned to Lyra. She was standing with her pistol raised, aiming at his heart. And you, Kale said. The lost Astria. Let him go, Lyra said. I have a better offer, Kale said. He gestured to the troopers who lowered their weapons but kept them aimed at Jonah. Look at the map. Lyra. He pointed to the holographic display. The galaxy is on the brink of chaos, Kale said. If I die, the power vacuum will cause a civil war that will last 50 years. Billions will die. Is that what you want? I want freedom, Lyra said. Freedom is messy, Kale said. Order is precise. I offer you the throne, truly. Take your place as queen. Rule by my side. We will use the child to guide the Dominion into a golden age of peace. And Jonah? Lyra asked. He is a traitor, Kale said, shrugging. He dies. That is the law. Lyra looked at Jonah. He was lying on the floor, unable to move, his eyes locked on hers. He was pleading with her, not for his life, but for her soul. Don't do it, his eyes said. And if I refuse? Lyra asked. Then I kill him now, Kale said, and I take the child, and I purge the moon below, and I rule anyway. You have lost. Lyra. The only choice left is whether you want to be a queen or a corpse. Lyra lowered her gun. No, Jonah choked out. Lyra, don't! Lyra looked at him. Her face was a mask of porcelain. All the warmth, all the vulnerability of the night before was gone. You are right, Minister, Lyra said. Her voice was cold. Thrones demand sacrifices. She turned to Kale and knelt. She placed her pistol on the floor. I surrender, Lyra said. I accept the throne. Lyra, Jonah screamed. It was a sound of pure devastation. The betrayal hit him harder than a bullet. The prophecy. You will save me by losing him. She was saving herself. She was choosing power. Kale smiled. It was a shark's smile. Wise choice, Your Majesty. He motioned to the guards. Take the traitor to the airlock. Eject him. 2 guards grabbed Jonah by the arms and dragged him backward. He didn't fight. He just watched Lyra. She didn't look at him. She stared straight ahead, at the golden boots of the minister. I loved you, Jonah whispered as they dragged him past her. I chose you. Lyra didn't flinch. As the doors slid shut, cutting off Jonah's view, Kyle extended his hand to Lyra. Rise, Kyle said. We have a broadcast to make. Lyra stood up. Her face was unreadable. Back in the shuttle, hidden in the vent, Sarai watched the feed on her monitor. She saw Jonah being dragged away to his death. She saw Lyra standing at the right hand of the tyrant. Tears rolled down Sarai's face, soaking into the veil. She did it, Sarai whispered to the empty air. She chose who burns. But Sarai wasn't crying because Lyra had turned evil. She was crying because she had finally seen the end of the story. And she knew exactly how much it was going to hurt. The airlock of the Sovereign smelled of ozone and recycled fear. It was a small, sterile chamber designed for one purpose: to turn living things into debris. Jonah Reed stood with his back against the inner door. His wrists were bound in magnetic cuffs that hummed with a low, headache-inducing frequency. Across the small space, the outer hatch was a circle of reinforced darkness, the only thing separating him from the vacuum of the moon's orbit. He did not look at the two guards who were programming the decompression sequence. He looked at the floor. He was going to die. That was a fact, as solid and cold as the deck plating. But the terror that usually accompanied the end of a life was absent. In its place was a heavy, suffocating gray. Lyra had knelt. The image played on a loop in his mind, brighter and sharper than the warning lights flashing above the hatch. She had looked at the tyrant Kale, looked at the power he offered, and she had lowered herself to the floor. She had chosen the crown. She had chosen survival. Jonah closed his eyes. He wasn't angry. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to rage against the betrayal, to scream that she was a liar and a monster, but he couldn't find the heat. All he felt was a profound, hollowing grief. He had stripped himself bare for her. He had broken his own code, burned his own past, and offered her everything he had left. And it had not been enough. "Decompression in 30 seconds, one of the guards stated, his voice bored. Jonah leaned his head back against the metal. "I loved you," he thought, sending the words out into the silence. "I hope the throne is comfortable. Lyra, I hope it keeps you warm." At the apex of the flagship, in the grand broadcast spire, Lyra Voss stood before a wall of black glass. She wore a robe of heavy white synth silk, draped over her shoulders like a shroud. High Minister Kale stood beside her, his hand resting possessively on the golden scepter that controlled the station's defenses, and Sarai's mind. Below them, in the vast amphitheater of the bridge, hundreds of delegates, ministers, and military commanders were watching. Cameras floated in the air like inquisitive eyes, beaming this moment to every ship in the fleet and every screen in the Dominion. "Smile, my dear," Kyle murmured, his voice low enough that the microphones wouldn't catch it. "You are saving the galaxy." Lyra did not smile. Her face was a mask of perfect frozen porcelain. Inside, her heart was beating so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She had to kneel. It was the only way. The broadcast core of the Sovereign was bio-locked. It would only accept commands from the High Minister or a confirmed member of the royal bloodline. To access the system, to upload the truth recordings the rebels had given her. She needed to be logged in. She needed to be the queen. She had traded Jonah's life for a password. The thought made bile rise in her throat. She had seen the look in his eyes when the guards dragged him away. The heartbreak. The absolute destruction of his trust. He was going to die believing she was exactly what the world said she was. A cold, calculating Asteri noble. "Hold the line," she told herself, her fingernails digging into her palms. "If you break now, he dies for nothing." "Citizens of the Dominion," Kale boomed, addressing the galaxy. "Today we usher in a new era of stability. The terrorist threat has been neutralized. The House of Astria has returned to the fold, pledging its loyalty to the Emergency Council." He turned to Lyra, gesturing for her to step forward to the command podium. "Queen Lyra," Kale said, "place your hand on the interface, verify your lineage, authorize the security purge." Lyra stepped forward. The podium hummed. It was waiting for her biometrics. Once she touched it, she would have full administrative access for exactly 10 seconds before Kale's scepter overrode her. 10 seconds to burn the world down. She raised her hand. "I am sorry, Jonah," she thought. "I am so sorry," deep in the bowels of the ship, inside the cramped ventilation shaft of the stealth shuttle. Sarai sat with her legs crossed. The darkness of the vent was total, but to Sarai, the world was blindingly bright. The implant interface had been ripped out. The filter was gone. She was no longer seeing the future through a keyhole. She was standing on a mountaintop, watching time flow like a river in all directions. It was overwhelming. A billion possibilities shouted for attention. The ship exploding, the ship landing, Kyle laughing and Kyle dying. Focus, she whispered to herself. Find the sentence. The archivist had been right. Images were too fast, too chaotic. But words had rules. Words had structure. A sentence was a path through the woods. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, looking for Lyra. She didn't send a picture. She sent a line of text, written in the ink of pure thought. The wolf enters the hall of mirrors. Lyra, standing at the podium, felt the words land in her mind like a physical weight. She didn't flinch. She knew the code, the hall of mirrors, the illusion. Sarai typed another sentence into the fabric of reality. The key is not gold. The key is the truth. And then, the final instruction, whispered directly into Lyra's soul. Turn the page. Lyra slammed her hand onto the interface panel. Identity confirmed, the ship's computer announced. Queen Astria, command verified. Authorize the purge, Kale commanded, watching her with a smug satisfaction. Lyra looked at him. The mask crumbled. Her eyes were violet fire. Command, override, Lyra said, her voice ringing out through the amplification system. Upload file, truth index 0, broadcast to all frequencies, priority alpha. Kale froze. What? Execute, Lyra shouted. The massive screens behind her, which displayed the Dominion seal, flickered and died. A second later, they roared back to life. But it wasn't the seal. It was the recording from the rebel base. The image of Kale, 5 years younger, filled the amphitheater. His voice boomed over the speakers, amplified to a deafening volume. We need a threat. We need to remind them why they need walls. We will arrange the attack. Blame it on the separatists. The bridge erupted. Delegates gasped. Commanders stared at the screen, then at Kale. The recording shifted. It showed the schematics of the chrononeural implant. It showed the orders to curate Sarai's visions. It showed the battle plans for the false flag bombing of the treaty summit scheduled for tomorrow. Lies! Kale screamed, his face turning purple. He lunged for the podium. Cut the feed, cut it now! I cannot, the computer replied calmly. Administrative access is locked by royal decree. Lyra stood her ground. They can see you, Kale. The whole galaxy can see you. Kale snarled, a sound of pure animal rage. He raised the scepter. Kill her, guards! Kill her! The 4 elite guards on the bridge raised their weapons. But they didn't fire. They were looking at the screen, where Kale's voice was currently discussing how expendable his own soldiers were. I said fire! Kale shrieked. Wait! The captain of the guard said, lowering his rifle. Is that my unit on the screen? The one you said was lost to rebel fire? It is a fabrication, Kale shouted. He pressed the firing stud on the scepter, aiming a blast of kinetic energy at Lyra. Lyra dove. The blast shattered the podium, sending shards of glass and metal flying. Rebels! Lyra shouted into her comms. Now! In the airlock, the countdown hit 0. Decompression sequence initiating, the mechanical voice said. Jonah braced himself for the end. Click. The outer door didn't open. Instead, the red warning light turned green. Sequence aborted. Security override. The inner door hissed open. Jonah looked up. The 2 guards who had been about to execute him were staring at their data pads. The broadcast was playing on every screen in the ship, including theirs. He set us up, one guard whispered, watching the recording of the convoy attack. The convoy, that was my brother's transport. The guard looked at Jonah, then he looked at his partner. Let him go, the guard said. Sir? I said let him go, the guard shouted, drawing his sidearm and shooting the control panel for the magnetic cuffs. The cuffs clicked open. Jonah fell to his knees, rubbing his wrists. He stared at the guards, bewildered. "Why?" Jonah rasped. "Because the Queen just told us the truth," the guard said grimly. He tossed Jonah his stun baton. "Get out of here before I change my mind." Jonah scrambled to his feet. He grabbed the baton. He didn't run for the shuttle bay. He turned toward the lift. "Where are you going?" the guard asked. "The ship is in chaos. I have to find her," Jonah said. The grief was gone, replaced by a burning, frantic hope. "She didn't sell us out. She bought us time." The spire was a war zone. Lyra rolled behind a marble pillar as Kale fired another blast from the scepter. The gold weapon was powerful, a focused beam of concussive force that pulverized stone. "You foolish girl," Kale shouted, stalking through the debris. "Do you think a broadcast changes anything? I have the fleet. I have the codes." Lyra scrambled to her feet, her white robe shredded, revealing the dark tactical suit she wore underneath. She didn't have a gun. She had left it on the floor when she surrendered. She grabbed a shard of the broken podium, a long, jagged piece of plasteel. "You have nothing," Lyra yelled, circling the room. "Look at your guards. Kale, they aren't shooting." It was true. The bridge was a brawl. Delegates were fleeing. The elite guards were fighting each other, loyalists against those who had seen the truth. The rebels, led by Kalen, had breached the upper doors and were pouring fire into the command pit. But Lyra and Kale were alone on the raised dais, isolated by the crossfire. Kale laughed. "I don't need guards. I have the key." He tapped the scepter. A wave of distortion rippled out. It wasn't kinetic force. It was a neural shockwave. Lyra cried out, clutching her head. The scepter was tapping into the implant network. It was designed to control Sarai. But at this range, it scrambled the synaptic pathways of anyone nearby. Lyra fell to her knees, her vision blurring. "Love makes you weak, Lyra," Kale sneered, standing over her. He raised the scepter for a killing blow. "You could have been a god. Instead, you chose to be a martyr." He swung the heavy gold staff down. A dark shape slammed into Kale from the side. "Get away from her!" Jonah Reed hit the High Minister with the force of a freight train. They crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs. Kale roared, striking Jonah in the face with the butt of the scepter. Jonah spat blood but didn't let go. He grappled for the weapon, his hands locking around the gold shaft. "Jonah!" Lyra gasped, struggling to clear her head. Jonah was strong, but Kale was enhanced by the scepter's energy field. The minister threw Jonah off, sending him sliding across the polished floor. Kale scrambled up, aiming the scepter at Jonah's chest. "I should have spaced you myself." "Lyra!" Jonah shouted, not looking at Kale but at her. "Now!" Lyra didn't hesitate. She didn't try to reach Kale. She reached for the story. She looked up at the vaulted ceiling of the spire, where the amplification speakers were mounted. "Sarai!" Lyra screamed. "Finish the story!" Over the ship's address system, a new voice cut through the noise of battle. It wasn't the rebellion recording. It wasn't Lyra. It was Sarai. And she wasn't whispering. "Once upon a time," Sarai's voice thundered, echoing in every corridor and every helmet. "There was a king who sat on a throne of lies." Kale faltered. The scepter in his hand began to vibrate, the gold metal heating up. "He thought the story belonged to him," Sarai narrated, her voice weaving a verbal virus into the ship's systems. "He thought he held the pen." The lights on the bridge began to strobe. The scepter whined, the frequency climbing higher and higher. "But the ink was poison," Sarai said. "And the page turned—" Kale screamed as the scepter became too hot to hold. He tried to drop it, but the magnetic field locked it to his glove. "And the maid," Sarai said, her voice dropping to a terrifying calm, "did not serve the tea." Lyra stood up. She locked eyes with Kale. "She poured the fire." Lyra finished, the scepter overloaded. The feedback loop Sarai had engineered, using the narrative connection to the device's core logic, shattered the containment field. The scepter exploded. It wasn't a nuclear blast. It was a pulse of pure data and kinetic recoil. Kale was thrown backward, crashing through the glass wall of the spire. He fell, tumbling down into the storm-racked clouds of the moon below, a golden comet burning out in the rain. The shockwave knocked everyone on the bridge flat. Then, silence. Jonah groaned, rolling onto his back. The ceiling was spinning. A face appeared above him, bruised, soot-stained, with a cut on her cheek and hair like a bird's nest. "Lyra," he wheezed. She didn't speak. She fell on him, her arms wrapping around his neck, burying her face in his chest. She was shaking, violent, racking tremors. "I thought you were dead." She sobbed into his jacket. "I thought I was too late." Jonah held her. He held her as if she were the only solid thing in the universe. "You lied to me," Jonah whispered, his voice thick with pain and relief. "You knelt to him." Lyra pulled back, looking at him. Her eyes were wet. "I had to. It was the only way to get the key. I had to become the monster to save you." "You aren't a monster," Jonah said, reaching up to wipe blood from her lip. "You are a terrible liar, but you are a hell of a queen." "I am not a queen," Lyra said fiercely. "I am just the maid." She kissed him. It wasn't the desperate kiss of the night before, it was a kiss of survival. It tasted of blood and smoke and the absolute certainty that they were still here. "Is it over?" Jonah asked, pulling back. Lyra looked at the screen. The fighting had stopped. The Dominion ships outside were powering down their weapons. The broadcast had done its work. The lie was broken. "The story is over," Lyra said. "Now we have to write the epilogue." The aftermath was not a parade. It was a mess. The treaty survived, barely. The revelation of the Council's conspiracy caused a purge, but not the one Kale had planned. Admirals were arrested, ministers resigned in disgrace. The Dominion fractured into squabbling states. But the war, the total galaxy-ending war, was averted. 3 days later, Lyra stood in the ruins of the Spire's throne room. A delegation of rebel leaders and surviving diplomats stood before her. They held a velvet cushion. On it lay a new crown, simple and silver. "The people are asking for you," Kalen said. "They know who you are now, Astria, the rightful heir. You could unite the sectors." Lyra looked at the crown. It was beautiful. It was power. It was safety. She looked at Jonah, who was standing by the door, his arm in a sling, watching her. He didn't say anything. He was letting her choose. Lyra picked up the crown. She weighed it in her hands. "My family believed that ruling was a burden," Lyra said softly. "But burdens crush you, and they crush the people you love." She walked over to Kalen and placed the crown back on the cushion. "No," Lyra said. "You refuse?" Kalen asked, shocked. "Then who will lead?" "You will," Lyra said. "A council, a real one, elected, not born." "And you?" "I have a different job," Lyra said. She looked at the door, where a small figure was waiting. "There are children all over the Dominion, children with gifts they don't understand, children like Sarai. They are being hunted, used and weaponized. Someone needs to find them. Someone needs to protect them." She walked to Jonah. He smiled, a slow, crooked expression that lit up his tired face. "The Guardians," Jonah said, testing the name. "Has a nice ring to it. Better than the Maid," Lyra said. Anna, ready to go. Captain Fuzzy Boots. Jonah groaned. We are never telling anyone that name. The new ship was not a courier vessel and not a warship. It was a traveler, painted a nondescript blue capable of long jumps and quiet landings. In the common room, the lights were dimmed to a warm amber. The smell of lavender tea, synthesized but close enough, filled the air. Lyra sat in a high-backed chair. Sarai sat opposite her. The child wore no veil. Her eyes were pale, but they were bright, focused on Lyra's face. Are we ready? Lyra asked, opening the old leather-bound book. Yes, Sarai said. She didn't look frail anymore. She looked like a child who had seen too much but had decided to be happy anyway. Where were we? Lyra asked. The end, Sarai said. Read the first story, the one about the maid and the monster. Lyra turned to the first page. It was the story she had read on the Aurum Spire, the day the drone spilled the tea. She began to read. The maid swept the ashes from the hearth, dreaming of a day when the soot would not stain her hands. Sarai listened, her head tilted. When Lyra reached the final paragraph, where the maid was supposed to marry the prince and live in silence, Sarai stopped her. No, Sarai said. That is not how it goes. How does it go? Lyra asked, lowering the book. Sarai smiled. It was a genuine smile, full of mischief and light. The maid put down the broom, Sarai recited, and she picked up a shield. She did not marry the prince because the prince was boring. Instead, she walked out of the castle, into the deep, dark woods. And was she afraid? Lyra asked softly. Yes, Sarai said. But she was not alone, and she knew that tomorrow wouldn't hurt as much. Lyra closed the book. She looked over at the doorway, where Jonah was leaning, watching them with a mug of coffee in his good hand. That is a good ending, Jonah said. It is not an ending, Sarai corrected. She looked out the viewport. Outside, the ship was drifting through a field of stars. They were not arranged in constellation. They were scattered, wild and free, burning with a light that had traveled millions of years to reach them. Look, Sarai said, pointing at the infinite dark. The stars. What about them? Lyra asked. They look like punctuation, Sarai said, turning to look at Lyra and Jonah. Waiting for the next sentence. She paused, her eyes shimmering with a vision that was not a prophecy but a possibility. Which ending do you want to write? Lyra looked at Jonah. Jonah looked at Lyra. They didn't need to speak. The cage was open, the scepter was broken. The future was no longer a script written by tyrants. It was a blank page. I think, Lyra said, reaching for Jonah's hand, I want to write a surprise. The ship's engines hummed, a sound like a deep breath, and they turned toward the open dark, ready to see what happened next.